We then go through the process. We start with the next issue, which is causation. And on causation, we do the same thing. That's where we can lose our cases. So we do exactly the same analysis on that. We go through documentary, lay testimony, expert testimony, the demonstrative evidence, and then pretrial evidence already in the record, already part of our record. Then we get to the issue of damages. Now, I think damages is where we fail our clients the most. We seem to think that damages follow naturally. If someone's injured, that everybody's going to see it, and damages follow naturally. So let me suggest to you how you approach damages. I taught damages in law school for 25 years. I've been trying damages cases for 45 years. So I know a little something about it. On the issue of damages, think in terms of each element of damage as being separate and distinct. Physical pain. The defense would love for us to talk in terms of pain and mental anguish, as if it's one element of damage, as if that's all one thing. It's not. Physical pain is an element of damage. It should have its own body of evidence. You should have an entire body. I'm being repetitious on purpose. You should have an entire body of evidence on physical pain. Then you move to mental anguish, and you do an entire body of evidence on every aspect of mental anguish. You know how many different types of mental anguish there are? How many different elements? All the fear and the pain that naturally the anguish that naturally accompanies pain, things of that nature. But if you do this same analysis, we put pain up on the wall. We put it up on the board, and it will say, okay, everybody we have, every witness we have who can testify to the pain of this plaintiff. And you know who quite often one of your best witnesses on that will be? It'll be the defendant who was at the scene, who witnessed the pain. And you think of how can you call upon this defendant to testify to the pain, to the suffering of the plaintiff that they saw at the scene. Because if you had prolific pain and suffering obvious, then you put them in a position where they either have to verify it, testify to it, or they have to be caught sort of by the jury sort of brushing it off as if it didn't exist. So they're in a no-win situation on it. But you want to know every witness who can testify to physical pain. You want to look at your therapist, your doctors, your nurses, the family members. The last person to testify, the person who's the least reliable on pain, is the plaintiff themselves. You don't want a whining plaintiff, but you want all these other people. Then you look for documentary evidence of pain, the document, the medical records. I have a lawyer who's been with me for 25 years, and she's also an RN. And she went through a medical record for me on one occasion, and I said, I want you to go through here and I want you to find all the pain, all the evidence of pain that you can find. Well, the guy I was having trouble because my plaintiff was this big old guy who was a construction worker in Houston who had been, he was on a motorcycle. He came flying down a road one day on a motorcycle riding home, and they had just put down fresh asphalt on this road, and when they left at the end of the day, they forgot to put up the barricade. And he's the first guy to come along, so he comes along, he hits that front wheel hits that asphalt, and it flips over and over, and it tosses him over, and it throws him on his back, sliding across that fresh asphalt, and it becomes completely embedded in his back and in his buttocks, and it was, deeply embedded. And then, to top it off, his bike spinning over and over, fell on top of him, broke his leg, and he's caught under it. This was not enough. The woman in the car behind him sees what's happening. She pulls up, and she testifies she thought she'd hit him because she came up so that he's on the ground, he's flat, and her front bumper is like right here over him. And then the gas cap pops off, and he's smelling gas. And, I mean, think about it. Do your analysis of pain, mental anguish, fear of burning to death, fear of so many things. So you take something like that, and you deconstruct it into every possible aspect of pain, every possible aspect of mental anguish, all the real, honest God fears that he experienced. But he was a big, burly guy. This guy thought John Wayne was a sissy. And he would never, ever testify to pain, ever. He wouldn't say, "I hurt." Not that big a deal. So I had Carolyn go through this record for me, and she said, "Oh, here, betadine X2, betadine scrub X2. She said, that's pain right there." "Really? Okay. Explain it to me." She said, "Let's go talk to the nurse." So I get the nurse. Well, the nurse ends up testifying that, yes, I had to do a betadine scrub. And what a betadine scrub is, I'd have to go in with this guy, and I would have to take tweezers, and I'd have to dig down into his back and pull out that asphalt. And then I'd have to scrub him down with this betadine. And said it was horrible. So, well, how did he react? Said, "Well, it was so bad," said, "I could only do a small section of his back at one time. Then I'd have to, because he could only take so much at a time. And we had to wrap up a washcloth and put it in his mouth so he wouldn't scream out and scare the other residents of the hospital." And I said, "Well, how did he react when you did this, when you went in digging in to pull these out and then put the bed in?" She said, "Oh, he cried like a baby." Okay, that's evidence of physical pain about a guy who would never use the word pain in the same sentence with himself. But that came out of that's just a medical record. That's just going over your medical record, seeing what you've got, and offering your proof. So, you do physical pain. Now you take the next thing, mental anguish. Then you take physical disability, take physical disfigurement, take damage to wage earning capacity, all your elements of damage, and each one gets its own body of proof, a complete body of proof. It's a terrible situation to find yourself in these days, particularly with the appellate courts that we have, reviewing records, to go in and you make a great closing argument and you move the jury emotionally and you get a verdict, and then that cold feeling when you start looking through the court record to find your evidence of damages. Oh, the evidence of damages, that's over here in the closing argument. Wasn't I brilliant? No, you weren't all that bright because you didn't put in any evidence of damages. So, think in terms of creating a complete body of proof with respect to every element of damage and with respect to your negligence and with respect to causation. Separate body of proof. Then the fourth thing that we look at, negligence, causation, damages, the fourth thing is we then deconstruct defenses. We take the defenses that we know are coming, and we put them up on the board, and we say, okay, now what are they going to do here? What is their position? And I had a defense lawyer, I had a retired defense lawyer with me for a long time, and I would give him the job of being the defense lawyer. And I'd say, okay, I want you to go into this case, and I want you to come at me as hard as you can, exactly the way you would if you were defending it. And then we would go in and we'd look at their defenses, and then we think in terms of what is our counterpoint to that? How are we going to oppose those defenses successfully?